Good morning, Zio here. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do it now. If you're not going to, but go ahead and hit that like button. Maybe leave me a comment somewhere saying you showed up at least. Especially on this one, because I'm sure I'm going to get several people screaming at me for it, because I've already done it on the Twitter. Apparently I have completely angered a complete community out there, to the point that I am now officially a boomer. So let's get into it, shall we? So, if you hadn't heard the news, Valve has confirmed that Half-Life is coming back to the world of gaming. We're getting a new Half-Life game. The only caveat, of course, is it is going to be on VR only. And that's where I have concerns, of course. And that's the community I ticked off, it would seem. Apparently, there are quite a few people out there who are just like dead set VR is everything. I mean, you do you, I guess. But yeah, apparently I totally ticked off a ton of people last night on my comment on this Twitter post from their new Twitter account or whatever, or relatively unused Twitter account. And that's what we're going to talk about. So, Half-Life, Alyx, yay or nay? Go ahead and let me know right now. You done? Okay. Honestly, I say great. Good for it. I would love to have a new Half-Life game, even if it is a prequel, because, you know, when you really get down and break it down here, they go ahead and they test the waters with this, right? They go ahead and say, hey, we're making a Fallout game. I'm sorry, wrong company. We're making a Half-Life game, right? And we're going to test the waters to see if there's actual interest out there, because, believe it or not, people have been waiting for the new for another Half-Life, like a Half-Life 3 to continue, or, 2 left off. And we haven't gotten it. Yeah, like, it hit the back burner ever since, Steam really became a thing. And Valve has, pushed and focused a lot into Steam. They kind of left their game development on the wayside, and it shows in some of the things that they have done game-wise, just honestly hasn't been there. You've got a lot of reused things, like, repackaging of old stuff. But other than that, anything new that they've kind of come out has sort of more or less flopped one way or the other. And it hasn't really done a whole lot in the gaming space, other than was a place to buy games. And Valve is really good with that. I love Steam. Steam is, of course, the thing that I use to essentially buy games for the most part. I will check Steam to see if it's on sale there before I go and buy it anywhere else. And of course, a lot of people do that. And now, of course, we've got Epic joining the fight, and, Bethesda's got their own launcher now, and Origin is starting to, or EA, it looks like, is starting to actually put things on to Steam, which is another story I wanted to cover. Haven't gotten around to it. Probably won't now, because it's been so long. But, having a Half-Life coming out to test the waters, it's great, because I'm sure it's going to do fantastic. The only problem is this little caveat of being VR, and unfortunately, like the what are they? The VR bros and girls or whatever out there, VR is not that great. I'm sorry. Listen, I'm gonna go ahead and be frank here. It's not mainstream, I guess is the best way to put it. Not knocking VR at all. To be totally honest, I love VR. VR is great. It's a unique experience. I cannot wear glasses while doing it, of course. I've got to put in some contacts. But that's just because I'm damaged in the eyes. But, aside from that, VR is a lot of fun, but it's more or less a novelty at this point. Anybody who I've ever seen who has owned VR, nobody regular plays their VR headsets, with the exception of a few people who have something like Skyrim or Beat Sabers, and even then, they typically, from my experience, of course, this is all from my perspective, people that I know who own Skyrim on every platform, including their Vive or whatever it's called, through Steam, they don't really play it through the VR. They had fun with it. It's a unique experience, to say the least, and it's a lot of fun, but it's not something that they immediately go to. They sit down and play their Skyrim Special Edition on the PC or on the Xbox or on their Switch or whatever else before they go and they dust off the dust off their VR headset, plug it into the computer, and boot it up. VR purely is just a novelty at this point. Yes, there are plenty of people who have the headsets. I had people, of course, bring me those numbers, which was fun. It was great looking at those, because of course I wanted to try and make sure that those were right. People weren't pulling them out of thin air, and I was getting a few different numbers because I was looking at concurrent users and stuff like, let's see, we'll look at this. Current peak of current users, of course, topped out at about 14.15 this year. It's down from last October of an 8.5 or 18.5. And of course, we're looking at about 90 million accounts on Steam just alone, and about 2 to 3% of those apparently have VR, or 2 to 4% have a VR headset, which is a staggering number, to say the least. When you look at it and you think, wow, so that looks like 790,000 people have VR. That's a lot of people, and it really is. It is a lot of people, but to the entire, base of that, group of people, it's still 2%, which is not a very large number at all. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean they're actively using it either. If you don't really understand where I'm getting at with this, let's take a look at the Xbox real quick. The Xbox was launching with something known as the Kinect. Are you following me? The Kinect was being shipped with the Xbox, and you didn't really have a choice in the matter. So everybody who had an Xbox had a Kinect. So you could sit there at the time and say, hey, the Kinect is huge. Everybody has a Kinect. Everybody is playing the Kinect because, 90% of the people who own an Xbox own a Kinect. Hell, I even had a Kinect with mine. Doesn't mean they're actually using it. It could be collecting dust. I mean, mine is right under here in this desk right now, still collecting dust. But yeah. That's the problem. It's VR. I'm at a loss for words because I guess I kind of said everything on the twatters, and now I forgot what all I was saying. But anyway, Half-Life for the VR. That's a gamble. You may be gung-ho for VR, and you may say VR is the future, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. The problem I have is VR has been the future for how many years now? Has it been 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I got my hands first on a VR headset for the very first time in 2008, I believe. And it was a heck of a lot of fun. And there was this one mech game that I absolutely love where they put you in a box and, put the heads, that's got monitors and stuff on everything and switches everywhere. And you had to learn to drive the mech. That thing was amazing. Loved it. Would love to do it again. And, but that stuff isn't cheap. It's not easy. Even though VR has gone down throughout the years, it's still not that cheap. You're looking at paying, as somebody was telling me, $200 for a VR headset. That's cool. I could also buy a DS with that money if I really wanted to. But what are you going to plug it into? What if you don't own, a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One that's compatible with it or whatever, or you don't have a rig powerful enough to properly run it? You're looking at another $400 or $500 plus especially if you go and buy a desktop, a good one that is already built for you. And there are other ways around it. You can get somebody else to build it for you. You can do it cost effective. You could probably build a pretty decent one for under $2 desktop wise and other stuff to really run this. If you really want to do VR, you could do it very cheaply. It's just a matter of figuring it out, doing the time to do it, but people don't do that either. That's another thing to think of. You know, it's really easy to say, well, you could just build it from scratch. You're right, you could. But how many people actually do that? Anyway, that is my biggest problem, is the fact that this Half-Life game is going to be on VR. VR is not a failing industry. I'm sure when I was talking about the Kinect, people are probably thinking I'm saying that VR is going to fail. And that's not what I'm saying at all. VR, it really is the future in some way, shape, or form. The problem is getting it good. You know, I had somebody else say something about how, you know, the SNES or whatever was also in the same boat as VR or something like that, and I never really quite understood that. Figured maybe they were thinking of the NES, because then it was relatively new, didn't have anything, because the NES had the success of the NES to propel it forward, and the fact that we were also in some kind of gaming war at the time, you know, with Sega and stuff like that. But, you know, a lot of systems that come out today have the success of their predecessors. When a new system does come out, or something like a new VR headset or something, it's the bee's knees for like 5 minutes. No joke. All your YouTubers, all your streamers, all your people who live in the cities who apparently have disposable income because their parents subsidize everything, or the government subsidizes everything, they can afford to go out and get the new HTC Vive or whatever Valve's concoction is. You know, and that's fine. They're more than welcome to do so. However, they're it. You know, a lot of the average person doesn't care. And on top of that, there's other issues with it as well, where people apparently, for whatever reason, get motion sickness from it, which I never could quite understand, because I personally don't get that, which is weird because I do get motion sickness when driving through the mountains. But, you know, there's a whole host of other things. And then, of course, you know, you've got the logistics with glasses and things like that versus non-glasses and stuff, where it makes it a little bit harder to do things and, you know, makes it less enjoyable and stuff like that. And, you know, it really is truly just a novelty at this point. Still is. Has been for years. You can sit there and point out to 720 some or 790,000 people who own, you know, a headset of VR type somewhere. It doesn't mean they're actively using it. They may break it out for parties. Get a friend over who's like, I've never tried that before. What is that? Is that VR? Yeah, let's boot it up. You know, with the exception of maybe having Beat Sabers, I don't really see myself ever using VR headset either, because what it's really lacking is good games. Not to say it doesn't have some decent games as it is. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick, because I did bring up Steam here and brought up some VR games, because it does have some decent things, you know, depending on your liking. You've got the Elder Scrolls. It's a great game. I love it. I'm still playing it. Borderlands 2 has a VR setup. Fallout 4, Thief Simulator. Actually, that sounds like that'd be a lot of fun. There was that bomb dismantling game that people were doing for a hot minute. The problem is, a lot of these games are great and fun for a hot minute, and then they fall off the wayside, and nobody really knows nobody's playing it anymore. With the exception of maybe Beat Sabers, because that's the only game I consistently see out there in the world for people are playing on, you know, Twitch and YouTube and other places. That is probably the one game I see the most often out of every other VR game, which is a shame, because I would love to see Skyrim more. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I love Skyrim. Just having the ability to move around and actually do things sounds great. I love that. But The technology is just not there yet to make it really viable in the average Joe. Now, could say, oh, what is this? Girls mod, girls VR, create impose in VR. There you go. There's something for people to go get upset about, because Lord knows you guys love to get upset. But yeah, I would love to have another Half-Life game. I'm afraid, however, what spawned this entire thing, by the way, is this here. I'm afraid that if they make this game and it bombs because it's on VR, and don't get me wrong, VR's okay. VR's great. VR is not that popular. But if it fails, it will probably be due to the fact that it is on VR only. And Valve will look at that and go, well, Alyx failed. I guess there's no real interest in Half-Life anymore, so we're just going to shelve Half-Life 3. When in reality, there's just no interest in VR. And of course, that's the comment that got people into a frenzy. No interest in VR. There are plenty of people here. There's 792,000 people on Steam who have VR. Yeah, okay, that's great. Everybody has a VR headset. Actually, I probably have one somewhere that I got as a Christmas present one year. Still haven't used it, to be totally honest. Probably due to the fact that I didn't have a rig to run it when it was given to me, and it's somewhere in a closet or maybe a shed. I don't know. Point is, VR isn't that big. It really isn't. Not to the average Joe. Very few people really own one that I know of. And that's just personally, but I can go online and find thousands upon thousands of people who have one. But of course, you have to go ahead and ask the question, how often do they play it? With how much regularity do they play it? Is it just sort of a party trick? Is it something to show off? With the exception of a couple of games, it really doesn't have anything worthwhile to play that it stays viable long enough for people to be rushing out en masse to buy these headsets. And of course, Valve is doing a headset, which honestly I think is the only reason they're putting this game purely on the VR, so they can sell those headsets. And this is going to be their flagship VR game, which is something VR needs. Not gonna lie, VR needs a flagship game. You would think Skyrim would have been enough to push headsets, but apparently it's not. And that community is huge as it is, but it's not enough to push headsets. So I guess time will only be the only thing to tell whether or not Half-Life Alyx is going to be able to actually push headsets out there and get people squarely into VR. But I'm waiting for those Nerve gear, because I think that would be even better. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I will talk to you later. See ya.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment, smash that like button, and always subscribe for more. And of course, there are other videos floating around somewhere on the screen, so click one of those and see if you can find something that suits your fancy. Till then, I'll see you later. Bye.